The morning shattered with a scream that tore through the stillness of Willow Creek, a sleepy Missouri suburb where nothing ever happened until it did. It wasn't just any scream. It was the kind that clawed at your chest, raw and primal, the sound of a child in terror. On the driveway of 214 Maple Lane, 12-year-old Mia Carter, autistic and nonverbal, clutched her box of chalk as two men in dark vests loomed over her. Their voices were sharp, their movements sharper, and the air crackled with something dangerous. From the porch, Sarah Carter froze, her coffee mug trembling in her hand. Her mother, Ellen Ramsey, a retired Chicago PD sergeant, stood motionless in her faded bathrobe, her eyes narrowing like a predator locking onto prey. In 3 seconds, the world would shift, bones would crack, illusions would shatter, and a quiet cul-de-sac would become a battleground for justice. But to understand how it all unfolded, we have to rewind to the moment when peace was still possible and the scent of lilacs still hung in the air. It was one of those Saturday mornings that felt like a gift. The sky was a flawless blue, the breeze warm enough to carry the sweet fragrance of blooming flowers from Mrs. Harper's garden across the street. Sprinklers hissed rhythmically, and birds sang like they had a schedule to keep. At the end of Maple Lane, the Carter house stood as a quiet anchor, its lawn scattered with Mia's abandoned jump ropes and a tricycle no one bothered to steal. Mia was already outside, kneeling on the driveway, her tongue peeking out as she shaded in the swirling rings of Saturn with pink and turquoise chalk. For Mia, planets were more than drawings, they were her language, her way of speaking to a world that often didn't understand her. Saturn, she'd once whispered to Sarah, was her favorite because it wore a crown. Sarah leaned against the porch railing, sipping her dark roast, the kind that warmed her bones as much as her hands. Ellen sat nearby in her creaky rocking chair, flipping through a dog-eared mystery novel, her second cup of coffee untouched on the table. "Think she'll ever move on to Jupiter?" Sarah asked, watching Mia add a comet's tail in shimmering yellow. Ellen didn't look up. "Not a chance," she said. "That girl's loyal to her king." It was the kind of moment that made Sarah forget the chaos of work emails and grocery lists, just her daughter, and her mother, 3 generations breathing in the same quiet morning. They were safe. They were home. Then the low hum of an engine broke the spell. Tires crunched over asphalt, slow and deliberate, stopping right at the edge of their driveway. A white SUV, no plates, its windows tinted black, sat like a predator waiting to pounce. Sarah's stomach twisted before she even saw the men. 2 of them stepped out. No uniforms, just tactical vests with neighborhood compliance stamped in bold white letters. The taller one, lean with a buzz cut and mirrored sunglasses, carried a clipboard like a weapon. The other, shorter and barrel-chested, had a scowl that looked permanent, his hand resting on a pouch that bulged with something Sarah couldn't identify. They didn't smile, didn't wave, just strode up the driveway like they owned every inch of it. "Is that your kid?" the tall one asked, nodding toward Mia, who was still sketching, oblivious to the shift in the air. Sarah stepped forward, her voice tight. "Yes." "What?" The man didn't look at her, just scribbled something on his clipboard. "She's defacing community property. Sidewalks fall under our jurisdiction. That's a violation." Sarah blinked, her mind scrambling. "She's drawing chalk planets," she said, forcing calm. "It washes off." The shorter man snapped open a laminated booklet, his voice like gravel. "Regulation 17B, unauthorized markings. Subject to fines, citations, and immediate removal." Ellen closed her book with a soft thud, her eyes flicking up. "Who are you people?" she asked, her tone deceptively mild. The tall one didn't flinch. "Neighborhood compliance. We're authorized to enforce regulations." Sarah's pulse quickened. "I've lived here 10 years. I've never seen you at a meeting. What's your name?" The man's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Names aren't relevant. Compliance is." Mia made a small sound then, a whimper, her chalk box clutched tightly as she backed away, her eyes wide with fear. The shorter man stepped toward her, his hand darting out. "She's non-compliant. We're taking her in." Sarah's mug slipped, shattering on the porch. She's 12, she shouted, lunging to block him. An autistic. You don't touch her. The tall one moved faster, grabbing Mia's wrist. Her scream pierced the morning, a sound Sarah hadn't heard since Mia was a toddler, raw and panicked. Sarah grabbed the man's arm, but he shoved her back, her hips slamming into the mailbox. Mia's sobs grew louder, her body shaking as the man reached for something on his belt-zip ties. That's when the porch door creaked. Ellen Ramsey stepped forward, her slippers silent on the wood, her bathrobe fluttering in the breeze. At 68, she looked like any grandmother small, unassuming, her gray hair pulled into a loose bun. But her eyes burned with a fire that had stared down gang leaders and armed robbers in her 30 years on the force. Her voice was low, each word a bullet. You've got 3 seconds to let go of my granddaughter and get off my property. The shorter man laughed, a harsh bark. Or what, lady? Ellen didn't blink. 1. Mia's sobs filled the air, her wrists still trapped. 2. The men exchanged a glance, smug, underestimating. 3. And then the world exploded. Ellen moved like a storm, swift and unstoppable. She closed the distance in 2 steps, her hands a blur. She grabbed the tall man's arm, twisted it with surgical precision, and drove him face first into the pavement. The crack of his body hitting concrete echoed like a gunshot, his sunglasses skittering into the grass. Mia stumbled free, gasping, as Ellen turned to the shorter man. He roared, charging with zip ties raised, but she sidestepped, caught his wrist, and wrenched his arm upward. A sickening pop followed, and he collapsed, screaming, clutching his dislocated shoulder. In seconds, both men were down, one groaning, the other writhing, and Ellen stood over them, her breath steady, her hands loose at her sides. Wrong house, she said, her voice calm but lethal. Neighbors spilled onto their lawns, phones out, some filming, others whispering. Mr. Daniels, a retired mechanic, muttered, "Holy hell, did you see that?" as he live-streamed. Sarah scrambled to Mia, pulling her close, whispering, "You're safe, baby, you're safe." Mia's sobs slowed, her fingers digging into Sarah's shirt. Ellen stepped on the tall man's wrist as he tried to rise, pinning it with her heel. 5 seconds, she said. "Who sent you? And don't say neighborhood compliance." He stammered, pale but said nothing. She kicked his clipboard into the street, its pages scattering blank forms, fake citations, a scam laid bare. Sarah fumbled for her phone, dialing 911. 214 Maple Lane, she told the dispatcher, her voice shaking. 2 men posing as enforcement officers try to take my daughter. My mother, retired cop, stopped them. They're not going anywhere. The dispatcher paused. She took them down? Sarah glanced at Ellen, who was now calmly directing a neighbor to grab rope from her garage. Yeah, Sarah said. One's arm's broken. Send real cops. Now. Sirens wailed minutes later, red and blue lights bathing the street. 2 officers leapt from their patrol car, hands on holsters. Hands up, one shouted, then froze, taking in the scene. 2 men on the ground, one crying, the other barely conscious, and a grandmother in a bathrobe, standing like a general. They're down, Sarah said. Trust me. Ellen raised her hand slowly, her old PD ID tucked between her fingers. Retired Chicago PD, she said. These 2 attempted to abduct my granddaughter. Check their IDs if they have any. The officers cuffed the men, who now looked small, their vests cheap and unconvincing. One officer picked up the cracked clipboard, flipping through its contents. Violation 19C, excessive driveway art, he read, snorting. This is garbage. A neighbor, Mrs. Lopez, stepped forward, her phone trembling. I recorded it all, she said. From a moment, they grabbed the girl. The officer nodded. Send it to me. As paramedics arrived, Ellen knelt beside Mia, brushing chalk dust from her cheek. You okay, star girl? Mia nodded, clutching her chalk box, her breathing steadying. Sarah's chest ached with relief, but also something fiercer pride. You saved her, Mom, she whispered. Ellen shrieked. I just did what needed doing. The men's IDs, when checked, were fake. Their SUV, unregistered, was a shell vehicle, its trunk stuffed with more vests, zip ties, and a laptop filled with forged documents. They weren't compliance officers, they were con artists preying on suburbs across the county, targeting vulnerable families with fake fines and threats. They'd extorted thousands from scared residents, banking on fear and ignorance, until they met Ellen Ramsey. By evening, the video misses. Lopez recorded was everywhere. It spread from a neighborhood app to X, then TikTok, clipped with captions like Grandma Justice and Don't Mess with Saturn. Within 24 hours, it had 3 million views. By Monday, it was on the morning news. Ellen, who still used a Nokia and thought viral meant the flu, became an icon. Memes flooded the internet. Ellen in her bathrobe superimposed over action movie posters. Her countdown 3, 2, 1 set to dramatic music. She hated it. I protected my family, she grumbled. Not a movie script. But the story wasn't just about Ellen. It was about Mia's chalk Saturn, smeared but defiant, now sealed in clear resin by the city to preserve it. It became a symbol of resilience, sparking a movement. Across the country, kids drew chalk planets on sidewalks with Stand with Saturn. Schools hosted chalk festivals, and disability advocates called it a revolution in color. A local artist painted a mural of Mia's Saturn on a community center, its rings glowing under streetlights. The scammers faced a litany of charges: impersonation, assault, attempted kidnapping, fraud. Their bail was denied, their operation exposed as a countywide racket. A storage unit they rented held stacks of fake violation notices and a recorded boast: put on a vest, and they hand over their wallets. Not this time. The Carter driveway became a pilgrimage site, not for spectacle, but for meaning. A teacher from Ohio drove 8 hours with her autistic son to see it, whispering, "This is what courage looks like." A veterans group sent Ellen a plaque, "Protector of the Innocent." Weeks later, the mayor hosted a ceremony on the Carter lawn. Mia held a fresh stick of turquoise chalk, her hand in Ellen's. The mayor, in jeans and a flannel shirt, spoke quietly. "This family showed us that justice isn't just a word, it's a choice." He handed Mia a bronze marker, embedded in the concrete, in honor of Mia Carter, who drew her stars, and Ellen Ramsey, who defended them. The crowd, neighbors, strangers, reporters cheered, but Mia just touched the sealed Saturn, her fingers tracing its rings. Ellen was asked to consult on a state task force to combat fake authority scams. "Someone's out to teach people what real power looks like," she said, grabbing her old notepad. Mia, meanwhile, drew more Jupiter, Neptune, comets streaking across the driveway. One evening, Sarah found her sketching a rocket ship with 3 figures inside. "Where are they going?" Sarah asked. Mia's voice was soft but clear. "To the stars." The story didn't fade. It grew. A bill, the Ramsey Act, was proposed to protect vulnerable citizens from fraudulent enforcement. Neighborhoods tightened patrol regulations. Strangers wrote to Sarah, sharing how they'd stood up to scams, inspired by Ellen's 3-second countdown. At the park one day, Mia drew Saturn in the dirt. A boy asked what it was. "Saturn," she said, her first public word to a stranger since that morning. He knelt beside her. "Coolest rings," he said. Sarah turned away, tears burning, not from pain, but from hope. This wasn't just about a scam or a fight. It was about what happens when love meets lies, when a grandmother's instinct outmuscles fake authority, when a girl's chalk becomes a battle cry. Ellen never wanted fame, but she gave the world clarity. Mia never sought attention, but she gave it stars. And Sarah? She learned that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it counts down, soft and steady, until the ground shakes. The cul-de-sac is quiet now, but Saturn still shines, sealed in concrete, a reminder that justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it wears a bathrobe. Sometimes it draws in chalk. And sometimes it's just a girl, a grandmother, and a mother standing their ground, saying, "Not today." If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.